This is probably the question I actually get asked the most, Layne, from patients, and I'm guessing you do a lot, which is, Peter, do you think it is better to be completely restrictive or to have frequent cheat meals, like one meal a week or one day a week where you go completely off the rails, or just to have a little bit of stuff that is an indulgence every single day? And I don't have a great answer for them other than there is no right answer here. And even for an individual, that might change. And I'll use always my example, which was for 3 years, I was on a ketogenic diet with the exception of one day. So in whatever 365 times 3 is, for that many days, I never deviated from a ketogenic diet except for one meal when I had about 7 pieces of cake at my wife's birthday. And I said, that was really interesting. Like, I'm amazed I was able to do it. I look back at that period, which was 2011 to 2014, and I think, I don't know how you did it. I could never do it again. It would be very hard for me to go on a ketogenic diet for more than 2 weeks now. And if I did, if someone put a gun to my head and said, I really want you to do this for a year, I just can't imagine I could. I mean, the reality of it is, like, that would be a very difficult thing to do. And, so for me, like, I don't know what the word is, but like, I can definitely get away with a daily indulgence or a weekly indulgence. And it's very easy for me to get right back on program because I basically follow a very simple rule, which is never do 2 bad things back to back. Right? Like, if you ever miss a workout, which sometimes is going to happen, the single most important thing is making sure the next day you work out.
Yeah, getting back on the horse.
Yeah, if you ever have like a complete blowout meal, the single most important meal is the next one. So so that works for me. But I also realize in working with so many people, there are some people who do very well in a highly, highly restricted environment. And when they deviate from that restricted environment, it sets them off on a path that doesn't make sense. So, I mean, do you have any insights for helping someone predict where they're going to be? Or do you just say, no, you know what, just try them all out. Try all of these approaches and let's revisit it in a month?
I think part of it depends on the person's personality and their individual psychology. What we know is that if you want to lose weight specifically, you are going to have to use some form of restriction, right? Whether it's calorie counting, points, carb restriction, fat restriction, unprocessed food, whatever. You're going to have to use fasting. You're going to have to use some form of restriction.
Right. Either some form of dietary restriction, calorie restriction, or time restriction. You have to do something there.
And all of them, when we say calorie restriction, we talk about counting calories and actively, but all of these things work because they restrict calories. That's also important to note.
I want to come back to that, by the way, because this is, to me, the crux of where I think people will assume you and I don't agree, but I'm pretty sure we do agree. But let's go with that thread, and then I'm going to come back to the jugular question around that.
Very simple. You have to have some form of restriction, but you should pick the form of restriction that feels least restrictive to you as an individual. And this is where people get really crossed up. And I'll give you an example. People will find that form of restriction that felt really unrestrictive to them. And you hear it all the time. So I tried intermittent fasting. It felt like I wasn't even dieting. I lost 50 pounds and it wasn't even hard. Then they will assume that this is the right one, that this is the right approach for everyone because it was the right approach for them. And we tend to retroactively then try to justify why physiologically that also is the best approach. And this is why you hear people make kind of crazy claims about whether it's low carb or intermittent fasting or any one of these diets, which are all excellent tools. People think that I don't like ketogenic diets or that I don't like intermittent fasting or anything like that, and that's not true. I just am not a fan of insane claims about those particular diets. And I think part of the problem is people will say something like, well, I tried restricting calories, that didn't work. I went on a ketogenic diet and I was eating more and lost weight. You probably felt like you were eating more. But unless you were weighing out, again, you were weighing out. And the other thing that we should talk about is when you go to a ketogenic diet where you have really, limited food choices, there's not a whole lot of options for snacking. Like there's not really, like you're mostly eating kind of like defined meal foods, right? Intermittent fasting, you're not really snacking, right? You're having defined meals. By the way, that is a very, very, very vigorously present characteristic of people who lose weight and keep it off is they don't really snack. They have defined meals. And I realize I'm going on a tangent here, but there is something to be said for snacks do not appear to be as satiating, not just because of the food, but because of the mindset. Because when you snack, you tend to do it like not being mindful about it. And it doesn't have the same satiety effect. So one of the things we tell our clients is, hey, stop snacking. Not that, again, if you like snacks and they work for you and you can fit them in your calories, it's fine. But if you're having trouble, try stop snacking. And they say, oh my gosh, like I didn't even really feel like I was that less hungry. And all of a sudden I'm losing weight again. And cut 300-400 calories out.
This podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is formed. The use of this information and the materials linked to this podcast is at the user's own risk. The content on this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Finally, I take conflicts of interest very seriously. For all of my disclosures and the companies I invest in or advise, please visit peterattiamd.com/about, where I keep an up-to-date and active list of such companies.